July 25th, 1944. Dawn over the hedgerows of Normandy, France. The air stinks of cordite, diesel, and wet earth. Oberstleutnant Karl Reinhardt crouches in the shattered turret of his Panther, binoculars pressed to his eyes, the metal cold against his cheekbones despite the rising sun. Below him, the bocage country is no longer green. It is gray and black and burning and moving. You can almost feel the ground tremble before you hear it, the low, relentless rumble of tracks and engines. Not one tank, not a platoon, a river of steel pouring across the fields like molten lead. Sherman after Sherman, their hulls painted olive drab, throwing rooster tails of mud as they brined forward in columns 5 abreast. Jeeps dart between them like insects, half-tracks haul ammunition. Behind them, deuce-and-a-half trucks stacked with crates, fuel drums, artillery shells, endless, unstoppable. Reinhardt lowers the glasses. His gunner, Lieutenant Vogel, stares in silence. The loader mutters something under his breath, a prayer or a curse. Reinhardt doesn't ask which. "Mein Gott," Vogel whispers. "Where are they getting them all?" Reinhardt doesn't answer immediately. He doesn't need to. The question has haunted every German commander since the landings. The Americans don't fight like men anymore. They bury you under materiel. A single panzer division might destroy 20 Shermans in a morning's action, only to watch 30 more appear by noon, fresh from ports that never seem to run dry. He remembers the briefing maps back at headquarters. The Allied supply lines are not lines at all. They are oceans. Every day, thousands of tons flow across the channel. Every week, more ships arrive carrying more trucks, more tanks, more aircraft. The Wehrmacht is bleeding men and machines faster than it can replace them. The Americans, they simply build more. Reinhardt's mind drifts, unbidden, to another time, another place. 8 years earlier, Detroit, Michigan, the River Rouge plant. He had been a young Hauptmann then, attached to a technical delegation. The invitation had come through diplomatic channels, courtesy of Henry Ford himself. The Americans were proud to show off their miracle of industry. The Germans had come to study, to measure, to learn. Reinhardt had walked those vast halls expecting to see something impressive. What he found instead was terrifying. The assembly line stretched for miles. Men and machines moved in perfect synchronization. A chassis appeared at one end, naked steel. Engines dropped in, bodies welded, wheels attached, paint sprayed, tires mounted, and out the other end rolled a finished automobile every few minutes. Not one, dozens, hundreds a day, thousands a week. The noise was deafening, a mechanical heartbeat that never paused. He remembers standing on a catwalk, looking down at the foundry where molten iron poured like water, the glass plant turning sand into windshields, the power station generating electricity for the whole complex. It was not a factory, it was a city, a self-contained empire of production that made Germany's most advanced plants look like village workshops. One of the Ford engineers had smiled at him that day. "We can make anything," the man said, "if we want to." Reinhardt had laughed politely. He had not understood. Now he understands. Another wave of Shermans crests the ridge. Their 75mm guns swivel towards his position. Reinhardt feels the old chill return. Not fear exactly, but recognition. The war is no longer about tactics or courage. It is about numbers. And the Americans have discovered how to make numbers infinite. He keys the radio. "All units, prepare to engage. Hold the line as long as possible." He pauses. Then, quieter to himself. "But God help us when they decide to build tanks the way they build cars." The first American shell screams overhead. The line breaks. Summer 1936. Detroit, Michigan. The afternoon sun beats down on the blacktop of the River Rouge complex like a hammer on an anvil. Hauptmann Karl Reinhardt steps out of the sleek black Packard that has carried the small German delegation from their downtown hotel. The air is thick with the smell of hot metal, oil, and something sweeter, fresh paint and rubber. Beside him walks Major Heinrich von Bülow, an artillery specialist with a perpetual frown, and two civilian engineers from Krupp and Daimler-Benz, who have been whispering furiously since the ship docked in New York. They're all in civilian suits today. Dark wool, starched collars, fedoras pulled low. No uniforms, no swastika armbands, just observers, polite guests. A tall Ford executive in a crisp seersucker suit strides forward, hand already extended. "Gentlemen, welcome to Rouge. I'm Edsel Ford. My father sends his regards. He's tied up this morning, but he insisted you see everything." Reinhardt shakes the hand. Firm, American. He notices the calluses. Even the boss's son has worked the line. They walk and walk, past rail yards where coal trains arrive every few minutes, past coke ovens belching orange flame, past the glass plant where sheets of windshield glass emerge still warm from the float line. The noise builds with every step. Hammers, presses, the endless hiss of compressed air, the clatter of conveyor belts. It never stops. They enter the final assembly building. The scale hits like a physical blow. The line stretches so far that the far end vanishes into a haze of light and shadow. Hundreds, thousands of men in blue coveralls move in choreographed rhythm. Chassis roll past every 20 seconds. Overhead cranes swing V8 engines into place with surgical precision. Rivet guns chatter like machine pistols. Bodies drop onto frames. Doors slam shut. Headlights blink on for testing. And out the other end, finished Ford V8s roll into the sunlight, horns giving cheerful little toots as test drivers take them away. Reinhardt stops counting after the first 100. Von Bülow leans close. "How many per day?" Edsel smiles the smile of a man who has answered this question before. "Right now, about 9,000 cars and trucks. We could push higher if we retooled shifts, but Mr. Ford likes to keep the men fresh." 9,000 a day. Reinhardt does the mental arithmetic. In Germany, the largest plants, Opel, Audi, and Union, might manage 200 or 300 vehicles on a good day, and that requires every resource stretched to breaking. Here, the line never hesitates, never pauses for missing parts, never slows because a supplier in Essen went on strike or a rail car derailed outside Berlin. One of the Krupp engineers asked about bottlenecks. Edsel gestures casually toward a distant corner where a new automatic stamping press the size of a small house is being installed. "We're replacing hand-fed dies with coil-fed, cuts changeover time from hours to minutes. Next year, we expect to shave another 10% off cycle time." Reinhardt feels something cold settle in his stomach. Not envy, recognition. This is not manufacturing. This is mobilization waiting to happen. They climb a steel stairway to an observation gallery. From here, the entire line is visible, a living organism, pulsing, relentless. Edsel points out the what-if zones, empty floor space deliberately left clear. "We can reconfigure for different models in under a week," he says, "or something else entirely, if the country ever needs it." The unspoken hangs in the air. If the country ever needs it. That night, in their hotel suite overlooking the Detroit River, the delegation sits in near silence. Bottles of Canadian Club and glasses of ice water stand on the table. No one has touched them. Von Bülow finally speaks. They could convert this in months, not years, months. One of the Daimler-Benz engineers nods slowly. Tanks, half-tracks, aircraft fuselages, engines, they already have the presses, the foundries, the tooling expertise. All they need is the blueprint and the will. Reinhardt stares out to the city lights reflecting on the water. He thinks of the Führer's speeches, of the 4-year plan, of the frantic effort to rearm while hiding the true scale from the world. He thinks of the numbers the Reich's economists keep secret even from the generals. Steel production, coal output, machine tool capacity. Germany is racing to catch up, and America is already there. He turns back to the room. "We report what we saw, exactly. No exaggeration, no minimization. They need to understand." Von Bülow raises his glass an inch. "To the day they never decide to use it against us." No one laughs. Outside, another shift begins at Rouge. The lights stay on all night. The line never stops. 8 years later, in the smoking ruins of a Normandy orchard, Reinhardt will remember that quiet toast, and he will know with terrible clarity that the day has come. Autumn 1938, Berlin. The Reich Air Ministry conference room smells of cigar smoke and polished oak. Oberstleutnant Karl Reinhardt stands at rigid attention beside a wall covered in maps and production charts. The delegation's report, now classified Geheime Kommandosache, sits open on the long table like an accusation. Generalleutnant Georg Thomas, head of the Wehrmacht's Economic and Armaments Office, flips through the pages with deliberate slowness. His finger pauses on a single line. Ford River Rouge daily output, automobiles and light trucks, 9,000 plus. He looks up. This cannot be accurate. Reinhardt keeps his voice level. It is exact, Herr Generalleutnant. We observed 3 full shifts. We timed cycles. We counted vehicles leaving the gate. The Americans understated nothing. Thomas closes the folder. Around the table, faces harden. Someone coughs. No one speaks. Thomas leans back. Then explain to me why our own plants, our best plants, manage perhaps 1/10 that figure on a good month. Explain why Opel, even with American licenses and American machine tools, still requires months to tool up for a new model, while Ford reconfigures in days. Reinhardt meets the general's eyes. Scale, integration, vertical control. They own the mines, the forests, the glassworks, the steel mills. Every process feeds directly into the next. There are no delays waiting for subcontractors, no excuses about coal shortages or rail priorities. The entire system is one organism. A ripple of unease moves through the room. Thomas taps the table once. And if war comes, if America enters on the side of the British, silence stretches. Reinhardt answers quietly. They will not build 9,000 tanks a day. They will not need to. They will build 30,000 trucks a month, 50,000 aircraft engines a year, 1 million rifles. They will drown us with supplies before a single new division leaves their training camps. Another officer, younger, more fervent, snorts. America is decadent, isolationist. They will never fight again, not after 1918. Thomas turns to him, and if they do? The young officer has no answer. Reinhardt thinks of the Ford executive's casual phrase, "We can make anything if we want to." He had dismissed it then as American bravado. Now it feels like prophecy. Later that evening, alone in his office, Reinhardt opens a locked drawer and removes a small notebook. In it, he has recorded every figure from the American visit: press tonnages, conveyor speeds, worker output per hour, absenteeism rates, almost non-existent, shift change efficiency. Beside each American statistic, he has penciled the equivalent German figure. The contrast is brutal. He closes the book, stares at the wall where a photograph of the Führer hangs beside a map of Europe. He does not pray. He does not despair. He simply understands something very few in Berlin yet grasp. The coming war will not be decided by the genius of generals or the fanaticism of soldiers. It will be decided by cubic meters of steel, kilowatt hours of electricity, tons of aluminum, barrels of oil, and the machines that turn those raw materials into weapons faster than the enemy can destroy them. Germany is building an army of quality. America is preparing an arsenal of quantity. And quantity has a quality of its own. Reinhardt closes his eyes for a moment. When he opens them again, the decision is already made. He will write one more memorandum, privately, to selected officers only. No copies to the OKW staff, no distribution beyond trusted hands. The subject line will be simple: concerning American industrial capacity
and its implications for future conflict. He knows most will ignore it, some will laugh, a few will quietly begin to plan around the nightmare he has described. None of them will truly believe it, not until the Shermans rolling across France in numbers that make the mind refuse to accept what the eyes are seeing. Until then, the warning remains in the shadows, polite, precise, and utterly terrifying.
December 7th, 1941. Pearl Harbor Naval Base, Territory of Hawaii, 7:55 a.m. The sky is already full of fire and smoke when the first wave of Kate torpedo bombers screams over Battleship Row. Below them, the Arizona erupts in a mushroom of black oil and orange flame. Men burn, steel twists, screams are lost in the roar of engines and exploding magazines. Half a world away, in the quiet Oval Office, Franklin D. Roosevelt receives the news. Within hours, the machinery of American industry, already turning, already hungry, receives its final command: war. Not the slow, deliberate rearmament of 1939-1940, not the cautious cash and carry sales to Britain. Total war, unlimited production, no quotas, no ceilings. The men who had once built Fords and Chevrolets now receive telegrams stamped with eagles and stars. The factories that had once turned out sedans begin to retool, not in years, in weeks, in days. At Willow Run, Michigan, Ford's new bomber plant, still half finished when the bombs fell on Pearl Harbor, the assembly line is already moving by spring 1942. Workers pour in by the thousands. Many are women, many are black men from the South who had never before been allowed near skilled trades. They learn fast. One B-24 Liberator heavy bomber every 63 minutes. By 1943, the plant will produce one every hour. At peak, a completed bomber rolls off the line every 47 minutes. More than 8,600 Liberators will come from Willow Run alone, enough to darken the skies over Europe and the Pacific. Across the river at River Rouge, the magic repeats. Civilian automobile production stops completely on February 10, 1942. The last civilian Ford, a Super Deluxe Tudor, rolls out and is immediately impounded for government use. The next day, the line restarts. This time, the product is different. Jeeps, amphibious trucks, M4 Sherman medium tanks, some plants, gun mounts, artillery recoil mechanisms, and trucks, above all, trucks. The deuce-and-a-half GMC and Studebaker 2.5-ton 6x6 becomes the backbone of Allied logistics. By war's end, more than 800,000 will be built. They carry everything: ammunition, gasoline, rations, spare parts, wounded men, replacement riflemen. They keep armies moving when the Wehrmacht's horses starve and its rail lines are bombed to rubble. Reinhardt had been right. They didn't build 9,000 tanks a day. They didn't need to. They built a flood of support vehicles that made every tank they did build 10 times more effective. A single Panzer might knock out 3 Shermans before it was finally overwhelmed, but those 3 Shermans were replaced before the smoking hulk cooled. The crews walked away. The next morning, they were back in new tanks. The German crew did not. By 1944, the disparity is no longer theoretical. In the bocage of Normandy, American infantry battalions receive fresh replacements faster than German ones can be killed. Supply dumps appear overnight. Fuel bowsers roll forward under their own power. When a bridge is blown, Bailey bridges appear within hours, prefabricated steel thrown across rivers by engineers who have practiced the drill 100 times in Michigan mud. Reinhardt, now commanding a battered Kampfgruppe near Caen, watches yet another column of deuce-and-a-halfs grind past his observation post. Each truck carries 30 men or 10 tons of supplies. Behind them, tank transporters haul brand new Shermans still smelling of cosmoline. He lowers the binoculars. His adjutant, Lieutenant Kessler, stands beside him. "They never stop coming, Herr Oberleutnant." Reinhardt's voice is flat. "They built the capacity before the war even began. We saw it. We told them. They did not listen." Kessler hesitates. "Do we still have a chance?" Reinhardt looks at the horizon where smoke rises in steady pillars. Another American artillery barrage begins, methodical, endless, supplied by trucks that never run out of shells. "No," he says quietly. "We never did, not once they decided to build." He turns away from the view. The rumble of engines continues behind him, steady as a heartbeat. The line never stops.
August 1944. Somewhere west of Falaise, Normandy. The road is no longer a road. It is a graveyard of steel and flesh. Oberstleutnant Karl Reinhardt walks among the wreckage. His boots sink into churned mud mixed with oil and blood. Around him lie the twisted hulks of panthers, tigers, half-tracks, staff cars, everything that once bore the Black Cross. Many still burn. The smell is indescribable. Roasted rubber, scorched meat, high explosive residue. He stops beside the blackened turret of what used to be his command Panther. The gun barrel is bent like wet clay. The loader's hatch is open. No one came out. Further down the corridor of death, now called the Falaise Pocket by the Allies, American fighter bombers had come in waves so thick the sky turned gray with smoke and tracers. Thunderbolts and typhoons strafed anything that moved. Then the artillery walked its fire across the trapped columns. Then the tanks closed in. Reinhardt had escaped the worst of the encirclement by minutes. A handful of men followed him through a narrow gap in the Allied line. Most did not. He kneels beside a gutted Opel Blitz truck. Its canvas is shredded. Crates of 7.92mm ammunition spill across the road like broken teeth. Nearby lies a brand new GMC deuce-and-a-half, olive drab paint still glossy under the soot. One front tire is flat, otherwise it is untouched. The American driver probably abandoned it when the column stalled, knowing another would arrive tomorrow or tonight. Reinhardt reaches out and touches the GMC's fender, still warm from the engine. He can almost feel the heartbeat of Detroit in the metal. He remembers the catwalk above the Rouge assembly line, the endless river of chassis, the casual confidence of the engineers. We can make anything. They did. In the 12 months since Pearl Harbor, American factories had produced 88,000 tanks and self-propelled guns, 2.4 million trucks, 297,000 aircraft, 41 billion rounds of small arms ammunition. Numbers so large they cease to mean anything until you stand in the middle of what they created. A shadow falls upon him. Lieutenant Vogel, somehow still alive, limps up, one arm in a filthy sling. "Herr Oberstleutnant, we have perhaps 30 men left, 2 half-tracks, no fuel, no ammunition worth mentioning." Reinhardt nods once. He does not ask for more details. There are no more details. He stands, looks east toward the Seine, toward Germany. The horizon is dotted with dust plumes, more American columns moving forward, unopposed. "Do you remember Detroit?" he asks quietly. Vogel blinks. "The factory, yes. They showed us the future. We thought we were being given a tour. We were being given a warning." Vogel looks at the GMC truck, at the dead Panthers, at the road that will soon carry American armor straight into the heart of France. "We laughed," Vogel says. His voice cracks. "We actually laughed." Reinhardt does not answer. there is nothing left to say. He turns and begins walking back towards the remnants of his command. Behind him, the sound starts again, distant at first, then growing. Engines, tracks, the low growl of thousands of American vehicles advancing on roads kept open by trucks that never stop rolling. The Wehrmacht will fight for another 9 months. Cities will burn, rivers will run red. Boys on both sides will die in places whose names no one will remember. But the issue was never in doubt after Normandy. It was decided in 1936 on a catwalk above an assembly line in Michigan, when a young Hauptmann watched automobiles being born at a rate no European mind could accept, and failed to make his superiors understand what they were truly seeing. The war was lost not when Berlin fell. It was lost when the first finished Ford rolled off the Rouge line in peacetime, and the men who watched it did not yet know they were witnessing the machinery of their own defeat. Reinhardt keeps walking. The rumble grows louder. He does not look back.
April 1945, the Ruhr pocket. Germany's industrial heart lies open and bleeding. Oberstleutnant Karl Reinhardt, now without regiment, without division, without illusions, sits on the broken stone wall of a ruined factory outside Essen. The sky is the color of old lead. Around him, the landscape is familiar in the worst possible way. Smokestacks toppled like felled trees, machine shops gutted by fire, rail yards twisted into abstract sculpture. This could be Detroit, he thinks, if Detroit had ever known defeat. But Detroit never came here to fight. It simply stayed home and worked. A young Gefreiter approaches, helmet gone, face black with soot and exhaustion. He carries a captured American M1 carbine, probably taken from a dead GI weeks earlier. The boy's eyes are too old for 17. Herr Oberstleutnant, the armies are across the river. They say the war is over. They're offering surrender terms. No more shooting if we stack arms. Reinhardt looks at the boy for a long moment, then at the horizon where columns of olive-drab vehicles move unhurriedly along what used to be Reichsautobahn 1. Jeeps, deuce-and-a-halves, Shermans with sandbags and spare track links draped over the glacis. Behind them, engineers already stringing new telephone wire, bulldozers clearing rubble, mobile kitchens steaming. No panic, no haste, just the calm certainty of men who know the supply line behind them is bottomless. Reinhardt stands. His greatcoat is torn at the shoulder. The once sharp creases are gone forever. He reaches into an inner pocket and removes the small notebook he has carried since 1936. The pages are yellowed, edges soft from years of handling. The last entry, dated July 1944, reads simply, "They remembered." He tears out those final pages, carefully, almost tenderly, and lets them fall into a puddle of rainwater mixed with engine oil. The ink blurs instantly. The boy watches, confused. Reinhardt speaks quietly, more to himself than to the Gefreiter. In 1936, I stood on a platform in Michigan and watched them build cars faster than we could build dreams of victory. I wrote reports. I spoke in rooms full of men who already knew everything. They listened politely, then they filed the reports away and went back to planning campaigns that would be decided by courage and will. He looks at the boy. Courage and will are not enough when the enemy can replace every bullet you fire before you reload. A distant American loudspeaker crackles across the river. English first, then halting German. Terms of capitulation, fair treatment, food, medical care, the end. The boy shifts his weight. What do we do, Herr Oberstleutnant? Reinhardt exhales slowly. The air tastes of ash and gasoline. We stop pretending we can outfight a continent that learned how to outproduce us before the first shot was fired. He straightens what remains of his uniform. Then he begins walking towards the American lines, slowly, hands visible, no weapon. The boy hesitates only a moment before following. Behind them, the factory ruins smolder. Once they forged steel for panzers, now they are silent. Across the Atlantic, in Detroit, the Rouge plant has already begun retooling again. Civilian production will resume soon. Cars will roll out once more. Fords, Mercurys, the new models promised before the war interrupted everything. The line never really stopped. It simply changed what it built. And in the quiet moment before he raises his hands in surrender, Reinhardt allows himself one final bitter thought. They showed us everything. We saw nothing. The American soldiers waiting at the checkpoint are young, well-fed, curious rather than hostile. One of them offers Reinhardt a cigarette. He takes it. Somewhere far behind him, the last echoes of artillery fade into silence. The war that began with disbelief ends with acceptance, and the assembly lines of America, untouched, unstoppable, keep turning towards
June
peace.
1945, Dearborn, Michigan. The Rouge plant hums again with a different rhythm. The war in Europe has ended 3 weeks earlier. Japan still fights, but the headlines already speak of VJ Day in the future tense. Inside the vast assembly halls, the camouflage green paint of military vehicles is being replaced by civilian colors: deep maroon, forest green, bright chrome. Workers who once bolted 50 caliber machine gun mounts now fit fenders and hood ornaments. The line speed has slowed slightly, not from fatigue, but from deliberate care. These cars will carry families, not soldiers. On a catwalk high above final assembly, an older man in a plain gray suit stands alone. Henry Ford, frail now, 81 years old, grips the railing with both hands. His son Edsel is gone. Leukemia took him the previous year. The empire is quieter without him. Below, the first post-war Ford comes together. A super deluxe convertible. The body drops onto the frame. The V8 engine is lowered, torqued, connected. Tires spin up for the final test. The car rolls forward into sunlight that pours through the high windows. Ford watches it emerge. No smile, no triumph, just a long, steady gaze. He remembers the delegation from 1936, the stiff Germans in their dark suits, the polite questions, the way they had looked at the line as though measuring a grave. He had not known their names then. He knows one now, Oberstlieutenant Karl Reinhardt, because military intelligence passed the name along after the surrender documents were signed in rhymes, a footnote in a POW interrogation summary. The man had requested no special treatment. He had simply asked to be allowed to keep a small notebook. Permission was granted. Ford turns away from the railing. A young foreman approaches, nervous, proud, holding a clipboard. "Mr. Ford, sir, first civilian unit off the line since '42. Thought you might want to drive it yourself." Ford shakes his head once. "Give it to the line. Let them see what they built." The foreman nods and hurries away. Ford walks slowly toward the exit. His footsteps echo on the steel grating. Outside, the Dearborn sky is clear. The Rouge River glitters under the summer sun. Barges move upstream carrying coal and ore again, not for bombs, but for bumpers and radiators. He pauses at the main gate. A bronze plaque, newly installed, reads, "In memory of the men and women of the Rouge who turned the tools of peace into the instruments of victory, 1941 to 1945. No names, no ranks, just the anonymous thousands who came, worked, and went home to sleep." Ford touches the plaque briefly, then continues walking. Across the ocean, in a prisoner of war camp near Cherbourg, France, Karl Reinhardt sits on a wooden bench in the exercise yard. The war is over. The guards are relaxed. American cigarettes circulate freely. Someone has a battered guitar. Someone else sings in broken English. Reinhardt holds the notebook, returned to him unopened. The pages are still there. The figures, the dates, the quiet warnings no one heeded. A fellow prisoner, a former Panzer commander from the Gross Deutschland division, sits down beside him. "You still carry that thing?" Reinhardt nods. "Why?" "Because someone should remember how it really ended. Not with flags in Berlin, not with handshakes on the Elbe, with conveyor belts that never stopped." The other man laughs softly, without humor. "They'll build cars again. We'll build whatever they let us build." Reinhardt looks up at the sky. A C-47 transport drones overhead, probably ferrying supplies, or perhaps the first occupation officials to Germany. "They already are," he says. He closes the notebook, slips it back into his pocket. Somewhere in Michigan, a new Ford starts its engine for the first time. The sound is clean, hopeful, ordinary. In France, an old soldier listens to that same sound in memory. Both men know the same truth now. The greatest weapon of the war was never carried into battle. It stayed behind in factories that ran 3 shifts without apology, building tomorrow while others fought yesterday. And when the shooting stopped, that weapon simply changed what it made and kept on running. The line never stops.